everybody, and welcome to this week's Ask Amy segment. Thanks so much for joining us. Andrea Slaydon is with me again this week. She's our investigative producer here and helps me with a lot of consumer things and all these questions that you guys are asking. We've been getting a lot of questions.
Yeah, we get a lot of questions all the time, and we don't usually turn them into stories. You know, we'll answer the questions and we'll learn information for ourselves a lot of times.
Yeah, definitely more questions than there are news stories. But even if something doesn't make it on air in the broadcast, then we're still answering people's questions. I always say, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but whenever we're choosing which question, which complaint from consumers and viewers will turn into a news story, I usually look and say, how many other people are likely to find themselves in this boat? I mean, how many other people can relate to this person's story, and by hearing how we solve the problem could benefit to maybe solve their own problem later.
Right. And Amy has her own email, but this main email is AskAmy@KPRC.com. And we do get, a lot of times we'll look in the questions to not only answer them, but then just kind of get like an idea of the pulse of the community, like what people are most interested in. Because sometimes we'll get multiple questions on the same topics.
Yeah. And that's a lot of times too how we can tell when something big might be happening with a company, that it's like all of a sudden within 2 weeks we got 4 to 8 emails from people all about the same company or all about the same problem, and it kind of helps us see what you guys are going through out there. So keep your questions coming. We're going to dedicate this segment to answering some of your questions that we've received over the last couple of weeks.
All right. We're going to start off with something that affects everyone, especially after all the flooding events that happened in Houston. Flood insurance. Louisiana emailed us. She says, I have a question about flood insurance. Mine is up for renewal, but I'm wondering if I can shop around for better rates. I am required now to have it after Hurricane Harvey.
Yeah, so 2 big things here that she said. She wants to know if she can shop around. And the answer is it depends on your mortgage company. So if obviously if your home's not paid in full, if you still have a mortgage on your house, if you're in a flood zone, which it tells me that she is, since she said she's required to have it since Hurricane Harvey, in Texas, you're only required to have flood insurance by your mortgage company. So if you're in a flood zone, your mortgage company is going to say you need some sort of protection if we get a storm. And so you need to ask your mortgage company, hey, would you accept private flood insurance, which is a fairly new thing, or do I have to have flood insurance from the National Flood Insurance Program backed by FEMA? It's like part of the government program. And so once she finds out from her insurance company if they accept private flood insurance, she could then shop around. I did that. I think I told you whenever I did this back in May, because I got my new renewal for my flood insurance from the National Flood Insurance Program. And I was like, wow, my rate went up from, I had to write it down. It was $572 last year, and this year they wanted $687. The coverage is the same. The deductibles are, everything's the same, what they would pay out. You can never get more than $250,000 from flood insurance through FEMA, no matter how much your house is worth. So I was like, let me see if I can get any better rates. Do you have flood insurance?
We are not in a floodplain, but we live up in the Kingwood area where, as you may have heard, some of those areas flooded. So to me, I'm like, I don't care if you tell me I'm never going to flood. Now, I don't believe anything.
Yeah.
I'm getting flood insurance. So we got it probably 2 years ago, and it's always been in that $500-ish range. But this year, like you're saying, yes, I did notice it go up a little. Now we're in the $600 range.
Yeah. So, and neither one of us are in flood zones. I'm not either. But again, probably both of us being in news have heard the stories over and over about, it has never flooded here before. And then somebody has 2 feet of water in their home. So you just don't want to be in that situation. Now, if Louisiana is with National Flood Insurance Program and her mortgage company says that's who she has to use, then it doesn't matter where she buys the flood insurance from. Like, multiple brokers and agencies can sell flood insurance from FEMA. It's all going to be the same rate based on where she lives. Like, it varies in price. Like, yours may be different than mine. It depends on your zip code, what type of floodplain or zone that you're in. But on average, Texas premiums range from $479 a year to $1,165 a year. So it's going to be in there. Now, if she wants to check and see, like, hey, could I do better with private flood insurance, she could do that. I can tell you about my experience with that. So I called. It was in May whenever I saw these higher rates. And I called the brokerage company that I use, and I said, hey, I just want to check what private flood insurance would be. And there was only one flood insurance company or insurance company offering private flood insurance in my zip code. And that rate was higher. So through FEMA, I was going to pay $687. This one was $729.23. So more money. And they did offer different things. Like, for example, I said that FEMA will only pay $250,000. This one would pay $370,000 for your structure. So, you have more. So check sort of the different things. But you know what else people should check, Andrea?
What?
Reviews of companies.
Of course.
So the downside, or sort of one of the biggest, if you're looking at pros and cons, one of the biggest cons is that these private flood insurance companies, a lot of people will tell you, have not been around long enough for you to see how reliable they would be in a major event like Harvey or like Ian, what just hit Florida. I mean, damages like that, with so many people, hundreds of thousands of people making claims in 1 year from one event, could break an insurance company. And then if they go bankrupt and you have nothing, I mean, who cares that you paid like $100 less for your premium if they can't cover your losses? That would really stink. So you got to look. I mean, and on this one, I just happened to Google the name of the company and reviews, and the only one that would offer private flood insurance in my zip code, they got terrible reviews. And most of them were for people who were saying like, oh, just try getting any money out of them. Like, you call and call and call. So all of those are things to take into consideration. So answer to her question is, can you shop around for flood insurance? If you're required to have it by your mortgage company, ask them first if they'll take private flood insurance. And if they will, you could call and check and see what benefit that might be, if any.
Yeah, and we'll put in our show notes, we'll put the links to anything we talk about in here today, including what Amy just mentioned with how to shop and how to look at reviews and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that'll be helpful. Okay, next up, climate control storage companies. You guys, every neighborhood in Houston, you drive down, they have a climate control storage.
I mean, forget Marie Kondo. Like, who are these people? I mean, I guess everyone with storage units, because they go up. I mean, it feels like there's more storage units than there are apartments.
They're everywhere.
In our area. They're everywhere.
And this is something we get, I feel like we get, at least 3 or 4 a month questions about climate control storage. You can get everything from not climate controlled, which I don't know if that would be a good idea.
Like outside where you access it from the outside, where it's more like a garage unit, I guess.
Right.
They have those.
And then, then they have all the way up to climate control with cameras, and the security measures to get all in. But no matter what kind of security you have, sometimes things happen. We've had questions about flooding. Their units got flooded, or theft. We
had the most recent one, I think, right, was the woman she goes in her unit one day to take some things out or to add some things, and almost all of her stuff was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that case, she had, we worked together on that story. She had insurance that was included in the cost of her monthly rental payment. But then when she went to file a claim, they were like, oh, well, they denied it. And she's like, what do you mean you're denying it? And so that's where we started out. Like, again, we learn a lot of things as you're investigating each of these cases. In that instance, what we learned is that no matter where your storage unit is, before something like this happens, this question, we haven't even got to the question yet. Give me the question, and then I'll...
Okay, Adrian wants to know, Amy, what is the liability of a climate control storage company when rodents eat up everything? Ew.
Yeah, so climate control, that means her storage unit was inside with air conditioning or heat. And so then you're thinking, I'm paying, let's get to that later. You're thinking that I'm paying for, an environment that is not going to have rodents, certainly. So first thing you got to do is you want to look at your contract. What does it say? Because while it seems like it should be common sense that you should expect that your belongings that you pay to store in a climate-controlled unit would be free from pests and rodents and rats, if there is language in your lease agreement, in your agreement, that says this facility is not liable for any damage to your property beyond the company's control, a lot of times it will say that, by a fire or an earthquake. they're saying those things are beyond their control. True, but a normal person might argue that an infestation of rodents is within their control. You know, like if they take measures to keep rats out or do routine inspections. Or there might be something in there that you have to purchase insurance to protect against that sort of thing. And so read it. If none of that is in there, if it doesn't say anything about any of that, then obviously, you know, you would just use your common sense thing and go back to like, hey, you're a reputable business. You should make sure that your facility doesn't have rodents. And you could probably file the claim, write a letter. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to have an attorney write a letter asking for compensation. I mean, you know, what were your damages? Take pictures, what was damaged in your unit. But these are the types of things where if there's no language, if there's nothing written in your contract, you're going to go back to, if they're not reasonable and they don't respond to you writing a letter and saying, hey, I expect to be compensated for X, Y, and Z, it's going to end up in small claims court is really your recourse. That's where you would have to go with that. And so then what would you ask for? Like rent abatement, like, you know, reimbursement for your furniture. But we all know they're paying you back for the value of, you know, what you might get for it in a garage sale or something. They're not paying you the price that you paid for it, you know, when you bought it brand new.
Or maybe you can make friends with people around you in the unit and see if they have damage.
Right.
Maybe team up and...
Yeah. I mean, there's always strength in numbers, right? Definitely. But so when we've done this story before, we did learn a few things, because some people said, oh, well, maybe check your own homeowner's insurance. So she does have a lot of damage and she needs to be compensated for it, furniture or whatever. And the storage company just will not budge. She could also check with her homeowner's insurance, because a lot of times if you have a home, you're renting one of these storage units, a lot of times your coverage will extend to possessions that you have inside a storage unit. So you could check for that about reimbursement.
So, yeah, takeaways from some of the past stories that we've been covering is, and you kind of already mentioned this, but don't buy insurance through the self-storage facility. That insurance basically isn't going to cover your claim.
Yeah, like, so what people find is if you're buying the policy through whatever company is offering the storage, it usually doesn't cover anything. And then if it does, your claims are limited to like a couple $1,000s. And sometimes you might have more than that. So just make sure you read everything. I know it might seem like it's easiest to just, while you're there paying for the lease, that you just go ahead and add on a few bucks for that insurance. But I mean, if it doesn't really cover anything anyway, you might as well go to like either your homeowner's company, insurance company, or just a third party company to provide that insurance. And then, if you have a problem with a self-storage company, complain to the Better Business Bureau. If you're not getting anywhere with the company when you try to file that claim, companies these days always respond to and don't want to be called out on social media. I don't think that you use that as a way to threaten a company, but I mean, you use that as a way to say, hey, here was my experience, and you're helping other consumers in that process. If you're being honest about it, right? I mean, you always want to be honest.
Right. And then even when you do complain to the Better Business Bureau, I know we say that a lot, the Better Business Bureau will go after these companies and try to find a resolution for you. I mean, they actually do through every single case, and on their website even, where you can search storage companies, see if that company is on there, read what other people have experienced, but they'll individually help you out with your case. So they're sending that sort of letter, they're sending that letter to the company to say, oh, this person called and said they had this problem with your company. We would appreciate your response. Sometimes the company doesn't respond at all, but when they do, it may be better than what you've gotten. Hey, let's take a quick break. We've had a couple questions. When we come back, we're talking about people digging in your yard. We've gotten a lot of questions from people over the years about they see a utility company digging and either they didn't put it back the right way or they don't like the way that they're taking their time on their property, messing up their yard. We're going to talk about that when we come back. All right, welcome back to this Ask Amy episode. We're just going through some of the questions that you guys have emailed us that we're getting from viewers and listeners. And one of the things that we hear about from people a lot are when utility companies come into their yard to dig for those fiber lines, or maybe there was a problem with a gas line that didn't really originate on your property, but now you've got some company in your yard digging on the right of way.
and it can be really frustrating.
Yeah, or you come up from work and you see 1,000 little flags in your yard and you're like, what's happening?
Right. Yeah. So I think that is where this question came from.
So Carolyn says the 811 line does not give information about why they're on your property. The website doesn't answer the questions either. Where do I find out this information?
Yeah. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So the 811 line that she's talking about, basically nationwide, maybe you recall seeing those signs that say call before you dig. So if you're going to be doing, or any company or utility is going to be doing any significant digging, you're supposed to call 811, report that you want to dig, you give them the address of the area, and then you have to wait 48 hours, and that waiting time is supposed to give all the utilities who might have lines or wires buried there, it gives them 2 days to get to the property and put those little flags and spray paint the little markings so that you know where not to dig. It tells you, like, each color means something, like if it's red or if it's orange, like this is a gas line, this is a this, and so then you're supposed to wait before you start digging. So it sounds like Carolyn was saying somebody was digging in my yard. I couldn't get any, or nearby my property. I couldn't get any information about why they were digging. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Can it work the other way around? So if I notice these little flags, like you said, in my yard, or already somebody's digging, but the crews are like, oh, we don't have any information about it. We're just told to do this. You can call 211. I mean, sorry, not 211. You can call 811. You can call 811 and you can ask. You can give them your address or cross streets, and they can check for you and tell you which company filed notification that they would be digging because they're required to, and then they could give you the phone number of that company and the nature of the work that they're supposed to be doing, right?
Right.
She said that whenever you call, this person that I spoke with at 811 said when you call the number, that maybe Carolyn thought it seemed like it was all geared towards the utilities that are doing the digging. And she said the recorded greeting does sound like that. But if she waits and talks to what's called a damage prevention agent, that they would be able to look up the address for you and tell you what they're digging, what they're doing. Now, if somebody's digging in your yard and you get this damage prevention agent and they say, we have nothing on file, no record of anybody that's supposed to be doing a digging, you can report that. And she said you should.
And there have been times where, I don't know if this has happened to you guys, but where you see the flags, okay, you know something might be happening, but they didn't put anything on your door, which they're supposed to tell you what they're going to be doing. Mm-hmm. And then it's like weeks and weeks and nothing ever happens. So then you're like, okay, do I mow around these things? Like, it's a pain.
That's a real problem. So we've had that, what happened. And so it sounds like to me, I mean, what the company is trying to do is meet this requirement that they file the notification within 48 hours. But then it's like a subcontractor or a third-party company that's going out, and they might not go for months. But they're like, but we already did the lines. But yeah, to your point and to other people's point who called us, well, the lines aren't marked anymore because when this third-party company goes out, I've mowed the grass 4 times since then, and nothing's there. That is a very interesting question because the law doesn't say that they have to go back out within, a week or 2 weeks while the lines are still there. But obviously, best practices, that's what this was all intended for. That was sort of the, nature of the reason why you have them mark it. When I say that you should report it, and you could report that concern as well, they say you should report it to One Call Texas, and it's www.onecalltexas.com. That has a phone number that you can call on there, or you could submit your information, your complaint or question online at One Call Texas to report it there.
And I'm wondering, like, these days, should you call, like, we put up a gazebo in our backyard, one of those Costco gazebo things. And we had to dig a little, but now, like, with those fiber lines they're putting in, I've heard, like, they don't put them as deep. So yeah. I'm wondering, should we call just in case? Like, are they going to know just to be on the safe side? I don't want to mess something up.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a very good question because when we started this, Andrea's like, well, how deep? I'm like, yeah, I didn't find that answer immediately, but to your point, those fiber lines are not very deep. It never hurts to just go ahead and ask. I mean, I would say if you're digging in your garden, obviously, no, where you're planting plants, but yeah, I mean, if it's, and certainly too, anywhere near the right of way at all, you would certainly want to call. True. Like the easement on the side of your property. It doesn't hurt to call and ask if they could come and mark it. Because you said you've heard of people like taking out the whole fiber line on accident.
Yes, we've gotten.
And then your neighbors are going to be mad at you, right?
Yes. All right.
So we're moving on. We're talking electricity. I mean, we get a ton of questions about electricity, and this one was a woman who called us after people came to her door.
Yeah, she said, Judy from the Champions area said, 2 women came to my door claiming to represent Direct Energy. They were wearing Direct Energy shirts. They told her that she could get 8 cents a kilowatt with no delivery charge for electricity. She's suspicious. She worries it might be a scam. How can she find out?
Yeah, and we've heard about these before too, that people go door to door. You got to be really leery because we've, heard of instances that long ago it was called slamming. Whenever they would switch your electricity company without your consent, you didn't really realize that's what you were signing up for. So you have to be very careful. Now, Judy was able to get a business card. It had some lines drawn through, and she's like, but this business card doesn't say Direct Energy. Like, who are these people? So the people that came to Judy's door, because she was able to take a shot of the business card and send it to us, they're energy brokers. And so they are people that are signed up that could switch your electricity to any number of electricity companies, right? And so they can do that for you. The good news is that in Texas, you have to be registered as an energy broker or electricity broker with the Public Utility Commission. So I didn't realize this either until I asked the question for Judy. But there is a place on the Public Utility Commission website, and we will link you to it in the show notes, where you can look up any energy broker or electricity broker by the name of the company that they're working for. And we looked it up, and this company that came to her door is a legitimate, they are registered with the state of Texas. And so a few of the things that it says that they have to, if you're going to go door to door selling electricity, you have to, it says wear a name tag. So I didn't ask Judy if they had a name tag, but identifying the company that you're with. But then also it does say that they have to be wearing clothing or a name tag or something that identifies which company you're representing. So in this case, it was Direct Energy, and she said they did have on Direct Energy shirts. So that is right. But with anybody who comes to your door-to-door salespeople in Texas, anything that they sell, customers have a 3-day right to change their mind with anything that people are selling door to door. So that's something to keep in mind too, that if you do that, you want to make sure that you get all the proper documentation. They have to give you disclosures and stuff. And the reason that's important is because if you switch your electricity and then you want to change your mind within 3 days, according to the state law, you can do that. You have that right.
It's interesting that they were a company that brokers for all electricity companies, but then they chose just one specific to go after in that neighborhood.
Right, because an electricity broker, right, could sign you up for any number of companies. But it sounds like in that instance, when they were going door to door, they were like, oh, we can make this switch from, whatever your company is to Direct Energy. So maybe that day they were only signing people up with Direct Energy?
I'm not sure. I use a company like this where you pay a yearly fee. It's $99 a year, but they're constantly switching you basically for a better rate.
Yeah, like they're always looking to see what's better. And there are a lot of these electricity brokers in our area because of deregulation that can help you do it. And it could be, it's a valuable service if you don't like spending the time trying to figure it out all yourself because it's confusing. I personally, if somebody came to my door making these offers, wouldn't sign up on the spot. I would probably take that card, go to the PUC's website, investigate the electricity broker. Are there any complaints about them? And then see if you could get that rate yourself. And if you couldn't, then you could, and everything checked out, then you could call them back and do it. I mean, always sleep on everything. And there shouldn't be any instance of like, oh, if you don't take this rate right now,
Is it just me though? Those door-to-door salesmen, they are very pushy about, they want to set an appointment and they want everyone who's living in that household to be there when they come back.
Right.
They always seem to be like that. But
I mean, it depends on what they're selling, but sometimes if they're selling something that is, high dollar, or they're going to try to get you to take a loan out, they need everyone who's on the mortgage to be there.
Good point. Okay.
To discuss it. Yeah. But no, pushy. I get you. I agree.
But hey, that's why they're salespeople.
Exactly. I know. The next question that we got was from Juan. And it was an interesting question, and it's something that has come up a lot in past years. But his question was about cash versus credit cards.
Yeah, he says, when I go shopping, I notice some sellers only take cash and not credit cards. Is this legal?
I think it's hilarious. So it's 2022. The question might have been before, like, why are they making me use, like not everybody has a credit card, and now it's like nobody has cash. Why are they making me use cash? I mean, Juan, if it's a private business, they can ask for payment in any way they, want it, any sort of monetary, whatever. And so if they choose not to accept credit cards, it's usually because it costs a business to accept credit cards. They have to pay credit card processing fees for every transaction. And so, yeah, they can say cash only. And you could certainly take your business someplace else if you don't have cash.
Or like whenever have you noticed sometimes when you check out, they say, is this debit or credit? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll ask, especially if it's like a, mom and pop shop, I'll say, would you rather me do it as debit? Uh-huh. Because I know that it's going to charge them less if I do it as a debit transaction than if I were to do it as a credit transaction, right?
Yeah, because those processing fees cost the business. It's also where you might see some of the businesses say, unless you're buying, like at a convenience store, unless you're buying at least $10 worth of items, you can't use a credit card. It's because it has to make it at least worth it for them to pay that credit card processing fee. And then they used to say like, oh, businesses shouldn't charge you, pass that processing fee along to you, basically charge you more if you're paying with credit card. That wasn't a law. That was an agreement that businesses have with like MasterCard and Visa. So MasterCard and Visa would say like, hey, if you want your customers to be able to pay with our cards, that's the cost of the convenience to you as the merchant or the business, you're eating those costs. You're not then charging consumers more because the credit cards don't want the consumers to not want to use a credit card because it costs them more.
And sometimes you get a better deal. Some places, like their massage place I go to, they'll say, oh, we'll give you $5 off if you pay with cash.
Yeah.
They want cash.
I mean, the other most common example we see are the gas stations. Here's the cash price, and then here's the credit card price, So there you have it, sort of your rundown in policies. We'll see if we have time for one more question before we get into it. This was something that we did this week was on HOAs, and we've got very little time left, but let's try to cover it. You kind of give them the rundown on this viewer who called us, thought that she was getting one thing when she purchased her home.
Right. Long story short, she bought in this neighborhood years and years ago. On the brochure, it said there was going to be a security gate with a guard shack there. Now, 15 years later, there's no guard shack in that location where she was expecting it. So that's kind of a long story short there.
Yeah, and so she had these marketing materials from the builder, and she kept referencing those to look back on that this is what they promised me when I moved here, and then they never put that guard check at the entrance where it says they're going to have it. So long story short, her statute of limitations has run out. So the attorney that we consulted said she did have a case, but she would have needed to have taken action or sued or done something by 4 years. The statute of limitations runs out in 4 years, but I mention this because we've gotten emails from other people who say, hey, we moved into this neighborhood a year ago because the builder said they were going to build this big fancy lagoon here. Now that we're here, they say, oh, they've decided to move it to a neighborhood across the street or across the way, like a related neighborhood. In those cases, if all you have to rely on, but you have those marketing materials, you could probably sue or file some sort of case and use that as evidence. That's strong. But if it's something, you're trying to hold them to without going to court, look at your contract. Make sure you're protected with whatever. If you want to buy a home in that neighborhood because of this feature, make sure you've got it written in a contract somewhere with the developer, the builder signature, and yours, saying this is what's going there. All right, that wraps us up for today. Thanks so much for joining us for this Ask Amy episode. We are going to have all the details in the show notes, everything we mentioned here for you to find easily.
All right.
Have a great day.